Hey everyone, we are Nick and Michelle Jensen, and you probably have seen us around the church with our three little boys, William and Louis and Thomas. We live here in this area. I've been coming along to the church for a couple of years now, and I'm really happy to be part of the community and of the church too.
Cool, yeah, so we've just been asked to share a testimony about a time that we've had to really trust God with like a scary or uncertain time, and for us that was when God really challenged us to trust Him wholeheartedly during our time of trying for children. This was a time that didn't happen quite so easily for us, so yeah.
At the time we were living in England, and God had opened a whole lot of doors to allow us to move over there, and we'd kind of gone with the intention of maybe going for a couple of years and just getting some experience, travel, make a bit of money, come home, do what most Kiwis try to do when they go overseas. But it turned out that God's plans were a little bit different, and we settled into our new jobs. We found a new church over in England, a really good church, quite similar in many ways to Lawrenceville Baptist, in that it was a similar sized congregation, made up of a similar cross-section of society, old, young, families, which was really cool. And for any of you who have ever moved to a new place, you know it takes time to make friendships, so that just naturally took time. But after a while of settling in, we felt like we were ready to start trying for a family. So we started trying, and then it was month after month of disappointment because it didn't happen straight away. And subsequently we've discovered that that's a really common thing, which at the time we didn't know because...
We didn't know anyone that struggled.
No, we just thought like it was just us. So yeah, we tried for about a year really, wasn't it? And just every month taking the tests, getting a negative result. It was a challenging, trying time for us.
Yeah. So after a year, we were then referred to a specialist who we went under some investigations and had to do some tests. And initially, the first tests that we both did weren't looking so good. And that was really hard to hear. I think we thought, like we said, we didn't really know anyone that had ever struggled, and we were then looking down this barrel of, is this going to happen for us? And it was a very scary time, especially being 12,000 miles away from friends and family who would be usually our support network. So it was this time that God made us rely on Him rather than on our family. We had 2 more tests to undergo, and were told if either of those tests came back with abnormalities, then IVF would be our only option. And that was really hard to hear. And it was told, I think we were told pretty bluntly as well, so it wasn't sort of, the blow wasn't really softened for us. And just remember we sat in the hospital car park both crying in our car, and just, it was a really uncertain time. But again, God made us rely on Him, and He provided so many different people in our church who we may have recognised by face, but not necessarily had a lot to do with. And all of a sudden, we were just surrounded by this massive network of people who were praying for us and encouraging us and sending us verses. And on those really sort of dark days, or we were getting more negative results or negative pregnancy tests and things, they'll just send through Bible verses, or they'll just encourage us. And we just knew that on those days when we ourselves just felt so heavy that we couldn't pray anymore, that we had people praying for us, and that was huge. Yeah.
Which arguably, if we hadn't actually struggled, we may not have formed such close friendships that we continue to have today, even now that we've moved back to New Zealand. So it was about a year or so, or maybe just over a year, that we've been trying when one of the elders of our church in England approached us, and he said that he'd heard that we were trying for children and weren't having much success, and he just initiated a really pivotal point for us, which was he said to us that he wanted us to seek him every Sunday after church, and he said to us that we're going to pray together every Sunday until you fall pregnant. And it wasn't like we'll pray this week and then next week we'll have forgotten about it.
If it still doesn't happen in a couple of months,
Yeah.
we'll stop. But
There was a real serious commitment that even if this was going to take years, he was going to be there, he wanted to pray, and he was going to carry on praying with us until there was going to be a breakthrough. And I think for both of us, that was the point where we sort of finally, I guess, gave up and gave in and just said, look,
gave it all to God.
we've done everything we can. There's only one person who can do anything now. And I think we just sort of breathed a sigh of like,
surrendered over to God.
that's it.
Yeah.
We're almost like we're done.
Yeah.
You have it.
We can't do this ourselves.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah.
It's that handing over to God, isn't it? So it was around this time that we were still to undergo those 2 more tests, the ones that were going to decide potentially if IVF was going to be our only option. The first test came back clear, which was a big sigh of relief. And I think that was probably the test that even the doctors were a little bit more thought that it would come back okay. And it was the second test we were more worried about, and we just kind of had this gut feeling that the test wasn't going to be good. A lot of prayer went into it from our support network, and by some miracle it came back clear. And I just remember when they told us, I just burst into tears of just like, I just couldn't believe the results were clear, because just something in me just felt like they weren't going to be. So for us it was a real miracle that day, a miracle that only God could perform, really. So we went from IVF potentially being our only option to now IVF wasn't even in the picture, it was no longer necessary. And the next step was for me to start some medication the following month. But again, God had other plans, and I think this was because we finally handed it over to God. And before I started the medication, and actually only a couple of weeks after our test results, we fell pregnant naturally.
At a time when the doctors had said that, you know, because of all the investigations, they pretty much said, don't even bother trying, it's not going to be this month. And sure enough.
Sure enough, we fell pregnant.
And that was after only having prayed with Mike at the church, the elder. We'd prayed with him twice. And that was it. It was, answered prayer right there.
Yeah, so it was just amazing. We just couldn't believe when that test turned positive. I think we were a bit in disbelief, and we just cried, and our support network...
cried more than I did.
Our support network were obviously just so happy for us and everything. And we just truly believe that God healed us both. That when we trusted God in that very scary time of, it looked like are we ever going to be able to have children? We truly believe God completely healed both of us. And as a result, we don't just have one child, but God has blessed us with 3 wonderful boys who are just wonderful. I know it's such a joy to be around. Noisy, but but a joy.
And all naturally.
All naturally, without any further treatment or any problems at all.
So that whole journey was definitely the hardest thing that we've ever been through as a couple. And I think it was probably made harder by the fact that we weren't with our families or our friends at home, but actually I think in a sense that grew us even closer together, because it was something we battled, I say on our own, not exclusively on our own, but it wasn't just like we could go and be consoled by parents or anything. We had to tough it out over there, really relying on God, which was really pivotal for our marriage too. I think that's really made us really strong. So I suppose the moral of the story, if you like, is that God's plans will really only flourish if you surrender those to Him, and that you trust His plan for you, and that you trust in His timing. That's something that's really easy to say, but really hard to actually do, because your emotions get so tied up in what you want, when you want it, and how you want it, but it's not necessarily the plans that God has.
Or not at that time.
Or at that time, yeah. But you just have to trust that He knows best. He knows where He's taking you. He's already got plans laid out before you that you can't necessarily see, but they are there. And even tonight, we were just about to sit down and do this together, and we were reading a devotion together, and up came Proverbs 19 verse 21. Many are the plans in the mind of a man, but it's the purpose of the Lord that'll stand. Little reminders like that, even today. And I guess ultimately too, God's used us in this experience to journey with other people who struggle to conceive children. We've had the opportunity to pray for lots of people, and we've seen many people healed through God's power working in an experience that we went through. And
our hardest experience.
If we hadn't had that experience, we wouldn't be able to pray with such fire, I guess. Just really grateful that God's used us in this way and continues to use us. And I guess, if you are someone, or if you're a couple who are wanting to start a family, and this is something you're finding really tricky, we're here. We're happy to offer ourselves as prayers, face to face, or in our own nightly prayers. Whatever you're comfortable with, we'd be really happy to pray. And a bit like sort of Mike's approach with us, we'll pray as long as it takes until it happens, because when you trust God and surrender to Him, He'll work in pretty miraculous ways. So thanks for your time, and all the best with whatever you're working through at the moment in your lives, whether you're stuck at home or you've got a bit of freedom. Just hang in there, and we'll get to see you all face to face again soon.
Yeah.
Take care.